I'm just going to sit back and relax. This is going to be the easiest episode of After Schmoe that I've ever had to record. Prior to us starting, Jay has gone on like 3 rants. I've just been able to sit back and relax. I hope that you carry this into this episode, Jay. How are you?
I'm absolutely terrified to do that. I'm just going to give you a spoiler alert right now. I have the shortest notes I've maybe ever had. I say it all the time. It's not to the detriment of the actual episode that we watched. But, you know, it is what it is. We had somebody call us out on Twitter last night because you obviously don't know how long Grace Hancock has worked at Collider. What the hell is the matter with you?
Oh, you mean, are you talking to me or are you talking to the fan?
I'm talking to you. You obviously don't know, and it obviously wasn't a joke.
I absolutely 100% know that John Campia hired her, so she definitely has been there that long. But yeah, that's just one of those things. I think some people come in and out of the show. God bless you if you're just now starting to listen to us. I greatly appreciate it, but there are some times...
Gesundheit. You said God bless you. I was just saying Gesundheit.
There's sometimes people get confused and they don't pick up on everything that we do, and that's sort of that's on me though. That's something that I have to learn and remember when I interact with people on Twitter. But yeah, he didn't know that we joke around and we do the whole "Who is that guy?" When we see somebody, the joke is the person hasn't worked on Collider until they are on screen for the first time. And so yeah, we've done that a million times when we watched, particularly with behind the scenes. That was always fun because there would be some strange cameraman in the background and Jay and I would just scream, "Who is that?"
Yeah.
Give us a proper introduction. Christian, you owe us an announcement. You owe us a proper introduction to all Collider employees.
TV Talk is canceled! Listen, here's the thing. Here's the thing.
That's what they should have done. That right there. That should have been how they handled TV Talk. What you just did.
Okay. I have 2 other Twitter interactions that I need to address. One, I was very perplexed by this next one. We got a tweet saying, "Man, I love it when the Schmoes Know Live show is throwing shade at After Schmoe." And I looked at it and I was like, "Hey, man, I watched that whole show, and I don't think I know what you're talking about."
He was talking about Cobbster's break?
Yeah, I get that, but I was kind of like, I mean, I don't know. It was more of like a subliminal thing. I don't know, whatever. I get it, but I was kind of like,
Well, that's throwing shade.
Was it a big deal?
Throwing shade.
You know me. You know how I am. Is it a big deal? I don't know. The other thing that happened.
I don't think the person was claiming that it was a big deal. He called it throwing shade. I mean, I think that's kind of synonymous to how you described it, which was it was slight and subliminal. I don't think he was making a big deal out of it. I think it was something that but that's why Cobbster did it.
I don't know.
Cobbster did it so people would pick up on it and be like, "Haha, that's funny." I mean, I did that. I didn't have a problem with that tweet at all.
I don't know if I would define it as throwing shade. It was more like lobbing shade. More like an underhand toss. But anyways.
What do you know about sports ball? Touchdown!
My other Twitter interaction that happened today, we had a little back and forth with Mark Ellis and Cody Hall and that Beardo guy. And I responded to it, and I got a follow from Cody Hall. And I was like, oh, that's nice. I caught a wild Cody Hall running around in the tall grass with my master ball. And then I looked and I realized that I wasn't following him. So it made me question, am I more famous than Cody Hall? The answer is no, but that's how I feel when, you know, people with an abundance of followers follow me before I follow them. I'm just like, oh, okay. That's good to know.
You should message Cody about Dan Le Batard.
Oh, yeah, I'll do that right away.
Not. Well, one thing about me doing this show is I've pulled some things. You know, I did. I think I've done like I did a Letterman top 10 list once. I pulled a couple of things from Le Batard. That's where the whole "you should be ashamed of yourself" came from. And when that caught on, I didn't realize it was going to catch on.
You didn't come up with that yourself?
When that caught on, I realized that I had to be careful, and I remember texting Cody like, "Yeah, I probably should have been more aware because I know that there are Le Batard listeners that would have known that I was taking that. I was ripping it." And Cody was just like, "Yeah, I heard that you were doing that."
You know what? I'm fearful for this because it's 5 minutes in or so, and we're going to get messages from Christian. You guys need to get into the show faster.
Well, I can implement a life hack, and maybe the music is already played by now.
Okay, well, fair enough. Plus, what does that Christian guy even know? He's not even on the show.
Welcome to After Schmoe. My name is Ryan Snelling. Oh, and please, I do not want to discourage you all from tweeting at us. We love to cut up. We love to make fun of things. So if you guys interact and we talk about your tweet on the show, I don't want that to discourage you. We're just having a little bit of fun with you guys. We love talking to you. We love interacting with you throughout the week. I'm Ryan Snelling, and you've already figured out that I'm joined by Jaye Williams. Jay, you doing okay?
You know what? I'm doing pretty good. And listen, you guys can tweet about whatever you want. I'm glad we established that on the show last night. Yeah, I do get a kick out of getting your all's tweets and your interactions, and we are big champions of the idea of reviewing the reviewers, and that's sort of what we do on the show. It's like the Schmoes Know review sort of thing. Some would call it After Schmoe. I call it other things from time to time. But, yeah, feel free to say whatever you want. I don't care. It makes for great content on the podcast to rant about it.
Yeah, we might start a new segment called Critiquing the Critics, and Jay and I might go back and forth as to how Ellis and Christian and, actually Bibiani and Whitney, they'll be on the SK Plus network next week, and we can critique them as well. So that'll be a fun segment. We might introduce that very shortly. I still have a couple of other segment ideas that I'd like to implement into the show, like the clueless Schmoedown representative, but we'll get to that here in a couple of weeks maybe.
I'm not a fan of any sort of segment, but that's okay. That's sort of a joke, considering
you can say that I copy Dan Le Batard, and I would just say that you copy Joe Rogan. That's
fair. That's actually absolutely fair. It's actually hilarious that I have that take, but I'm the guy with the segments on the show.
Yeah, and it's because I came up with them, Christian.
That's right, and it ended up being his favorite thing. I love that Jay guy. What he's doing with those things.
Yeah. Because it's weird for me to come up with a segment and be like, yeah, I'm totally going to do stream of consciousness notes. Like when I'm worried about hosting the show, I would and that's a very Le Batard thing to do. Stu Gatz has more segments than Le Batard does because, he just hands it off to the person who's not hosting, and then he's there to respond. And so, I mean, and I'm like Seinfeld in a way. I like to give Kramer his time in the spotlight if that's what the people want. So I have no problem with that. I don't know why I'm making so many comparisons, but anyway, let's start talking about some of the Schmoe stuff and Collider stuff from throughout the week. You talked about how this might be the least amount of notes that you have, at least for the live show. I don't think I've taken a single note this week, but again, that has nothing to do with what we're dealing with here, what we're going to be talking about today, which is good, though, because we're very well-versed when it comes to just sitting down and having a conversation about the things that we like to talk about. So we can handle it without notes. Don't be worried. Yeah.
We've done that before. Yeah, we've talked about some things before with the microphones in front of our face. Listen, do you want to hear my first note?
From the live show or in general?
No, for like all this stuff that we cover every week.
Okay. Yeah, let's hear it.
Where's Beardo? Where's Don't Be a Beardo? Why hasn't that appeared on the podcast? Listen, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of behind the scenes, some pulling back the curtain. Our fearless leader on SK Plus, Cobbster, sent out a little rundown sheet of the schedule. We've got this new show coming up on the air. Was Beardo even on that list?
Yeah, he's on Mondays with Sight and Sound.
So where has he been? Where's he been the last few weeks?
We already figured this out. He hit rock bottom when he had to interview Max, and that's where he is with the show. And now he's going to be reviewing, he'll probably put up a Justice League review, and that's going to be his show from now on. He went from interviewing people like Knapsack, like Christian, and he's just going to do another movie review podcast.
I'm concerned for him. I feel like he's he's gone a little bit loopy. He's just going to be walking around the Collider office like, hey, I haven't interviewed that plant over there. I'm going to see what their life story's been like. Tell me, plant.
His next...
Has anybody ever owned you before?
His next episode is actually with Cal the Schmoe Dog. So,
yeah. How about this couch over here? A lot of people have sat on it. Tell me your life story. No, listen, we're just giving Beardo some shit here. I do miss Don't Be a Beardo. It's got a place.
I've got an idea. How about we invite Beardo onto After Schmoe? Invite him onto After Schmoe. For one, we can help him get his...
Prove him that it can be done?
Yes. Prove to him that we can podcast online, but also it might help get his creative juices flowing, and I don't know, maybe we could reinvigorate him, because I think you and I are the only two people that put up 2 shows a week aside from him, so, you know.
I have a theory that he moonlights as a Pro Tools tutor in his free time, because, you know, no one knows how to use that software except for experts. Hey, you know what? You guys should use Pro Tools. Also, you can check out my new Linda course on Pro Tools in the link in the description box below.
Linda?
You know what Linda is? Lynda.com?
Yes,
okay.
I know what Linda is. Yeah. Anyway, we don't need to be shitting on Beard. So far, we've shit on people that tweet at us and Beardo. So moving on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Collider a little bit. Nothing new really happened per se, other than I've continued to have a lot of fun with the top 50 superhero movies list, because it's just, for one, I just love following it. I know that there were concerns last week. We talked about, like, does it make it feel less like a countdown? And I'm actually, that's only one aspect of it, right? So, like, yes, it is fun to, like, I've got the Collider YouTube channel up right now, so I can see 45 through 49, and to see that interesting, eclectic list, like, that's really fun to see how all of these were ordered, and it's hilarious that even within the videos, people have problems with where it is, and of course, it doesn't really apply to me either. Like, I don't think Dredd is barely better than Thor: The Dark World. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just, it's fascinating. It's like, if you put Dredd at 47, the rest of the list better be damn good. And I think that a lot of people are having a ton of fun with this. And I think it's just one of those things where, yeah, you and I can kind of talk about what this means for Collider moving forward. But all in all, I just love the fact that it creates the discussion, and there's just so much fun to be had with it. And any kind of, like, harsh criticism, it's just not, you don't need that here. This is just a good time, and I really appreciate what they're doing with this, and I've appreciated having that for me every time that when I wake up, because I don't wake up until like 11 p.m. and it's there for me always right when I get up. So it's been pretty fun. How have you been liking it?
Yeah, it's a fascinating sort of experience, because I love going through my day and checking my YouTube, like, you know, sub box, and just getting this nugget every single day. We talked about the format, and people, you know, I'm not going to say that we even have criticisms with the format at all necessarily. We're just interested in how it's being done. And now I'm really, really enjoying getting these videos every single day, because first of all, it's almost impossible for you to be, you know, over it, if that makes sense, because they're so short, they're so entertaining, they're executed, I mean, almost flawlessly, honestly, whether it's the production quality, the discussions in general, how they loop in clips from movies, how they're structured, just having people praise things, and then you might have like a Josh McCouga come in with like a comedic sort of take on whatever it is that they're discussing. And it's just been a really, really nice thing to appear on a daily basis in such short little bursts. It would be fascinating, I think, to watch this from front to back over the course of a week, you know, to sit on a playlist and go over them. The only thing that I will say about these lists type of programming that you see on YouTube in general, and just all over the internet, especially towards the end of the year when you have movies of the year, TV of the year, albums of the year stuff, is that they're supposed to get you sort of frustrated and upset and want they're supposed to incite debate, right? I mean, that's what we want. We want people to have their own opinions. One of the biggest confusing things I think one of the most confusing aspects I think people have when they're looking at these list types of things. Listen, this isn't the list that they think every single person should have. Like, whatever they come up with their top 10, they're not saying every person should think that these 10 films. It's just what they think. They want to know what you have to say about it. They want you to get in those comment sections and debate their opinion. So I think it's good. I think people just need to sort of look at it from that perspective and just be entertained by it and not be so, I mean, emotional investment is fine, but, don't take it as like, this is what I have to accept as the number 48 superhero film of all time.
I also like the idea of them. They've had fun inserting clips that interact with what the pundits are saying. So when Makuga says something ridiculous, you cut to Raphael from Ninja Turtles saying, "Are you serious, man?" Like something like that. I thought that's pretty enjoyable that they're able to kind of do that. And yeah, like I said, I just think I think that we could talk about sort of the format of how it's released all day, but as far as like, I know that people are probably still pretty worked up, and we can use this topic to transition into what Christian did today. But I know a lot of people were concerned about Batman v Superman being in the honorable mentions. And I think, by the way, I just wanted to go over this real quick. So far, that video, the honorable mentions, has 70,000 views.
Yeah.
And all of the ones last week have made it up to about 50,000. So I think that it's hard to tell trends right now, just because like the videos from this week only have like 11 to 21,000 views. But this Thor: The Dark World video has more views than most Collider TV Talks ever did.
I have two points real quick to sort of spin off of that. One, that all of that is fascinating, and I think it's also a very important thing to think about, that these are not videos that are dependent on any sort of topical discussion necessarily. These are videos that have longevity. You can go back to them. People can share them. People can watch them at any time. So we will only see those views increase over time. The other thing I do want to sort of throw in there, one thing that I want to see as supplementary content to this whole top 10 thing, I want to see a sort of behind the scenes of making this, not necessarily from a production aspect, but I want to know how the voting was done. Like, I want to know the criteria. I want to know, because, like, for instance, today, the one that I watched was the Ninja Turtles, and almost every single person said that they thought it should be higher. So I'm sort of wondering to myself, okay, well, why wasn't it higher? Let's go over that. And maybe that could be done in a podcast sort of thing as opposed to a video. But there's so much other stuff that I feel like you can do with this.
That's true. There could be like a top 50 commentary where like 5 of them maybe get together and sort of talk about the list once it's done with. I don't know if they filmed any footage. I'd be curious, because I know, with the cancellation of behind the scenes, I don't know if they were already prepping that kind of material. And if they didn't, then we kind of have to wait on that idea for the next list that they do, which probably won't even happen until 2018 at least. So, but that is a good idea, just to actually get them to actually talk about it a little bit in depth. Would be pretty fascinating.
All they do is follow all of our ideas. I mean,
well, let's okay, good. Yeah, let's use this to transition, and we'll go back to that Batman v Superman thing too with this. So I remember throwing out the idea. I wanted to see what it was like when all of the pundits, what they were doing outside of the office, whether it be for a lunch break or whatever. And I think I came up with the idea like coffee with Christian and Ken or something like that with their walks to the coffee shop. So today, this is Thursday that we're recording this, Christian posts a Facebook live stream of him driving in a car. And the influence for my idea was Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. And maybe most of the idea was them walking to the coffee shop. But, you know what's also in the Comedians of Cars Getting Coffee title? Cars. And Christian Harloff decided to stream from his car. And the only problem I have with this is that he credited Take 3. So don't know what's going on there, really. But yet again, we have an idea of ours that goes without copyright, without trademark, and Collider gets to use it for their own personal gain.
Well, I actually gave him I have this in writing, okay? I gave him the perfect name today. I DM'd him to tell him that I enjoyed it. Of course, he didn't respond. But I said, hey, man, I really liked the Drive Time Live that you did today. Yes, that's right. Drive Time Live. Some sort of thumbnail that I'm going to be making in like probably 2 weeks. Actually, you know what? Brian Ward can do that. Go ahead, Brian. Do your thing, man.
It sounds like Slime Time Live on Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Are you too old for that?
It's a play on words. No, I don't know. Sure.
It was hosted by Dave Azer.
That's just some guy that you made up. Probably works for Collider in some back room. Next to Jonathan, what's his name? Voitko.
Anyway, so I watched a little bit of it. I saw enough of it to know what he was doing and the fact that I was fearing for his life, filming this during LA traffic. And then I was laughing at the fact that it ended up being a vertical video, even though it's meant to be horizontal. So I was having a good time at that because I've in the past I've poked fun at Christian and how he doesn't know how to crop photos when he posts them. And he posts a lot of vertical pictures horizontally, and you have so much black space, and when he puts them on Instagram, he's screenshotting one sentence notes. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But so I just got a kick out of the fact that he just set a phone on his dash instead of getting a phone mount and doing it the proper way. But anyway, I didn't watch it, not for any particular reason, but I know that you did. So give me the goods. What happened? What did he talk about?
I did watch it, and let me just say this. I actually really, really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. It was funny. There was some behind-the-scenes stuff. It was the sort of talk that I like hearing about Collider. Obviously, we get into the nitty-gritty of stuff, and a lot of it's speculation. Sometimes it's stuff that's actually passed on to us, and sometimes it's just general observation. But he was sort of getting... talking about not necessarily the politics of Collider, but just, I don't know. It was interesting. He got into sort of the whole discussion around the TV talk cancellation and what went into that and addressing that. He got into some of the stuff with Cobbster, the fact that Cobbster was real, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, when we get into the live show, but Cobbster being peeved, but also praising Cobbster and transitioning that into all of the amazing behind-the-scenes stuff that some of the editing staff, some of the people that we don't get to see all the time, the who the hell is that people, all the hard work that they put into stuff. It was just a really, really good conversation. Even went into the whole thing about Collider being biased towards Marvel and being DC haters, and it was just a very, very fascinating sort of discussion. It's funny because I actually, yes, he did film it vertically, even though he had the phone sitting sideways or whatever. You know how it goes. But
yeah,
I actually was able to watch it in the right orientation because what I did was I just set my phone down on my desk flat and just turned it so that it didn't actually like flip it. So that's how I witnessed it. But, here's the thing that I appreciate about this, and funny enough, we've talked here on the show before how we would love to see some people in the Collider space. Some people do this, but actually maybe go the extra mile and try to do shows. Like if Collider Nightmares is canceled and they feel passionate enough about it, then take it and turn it into some sort of podcast and just do these sort of additional bonus material type of things. The person that does that all the time is Christian. We've seen him do these Q&A things for Collider. We've seen him do these Q&A things for the Schmoe Down. And, things like how your camera is mounted or audio quality or whatever. He doesn't really care about all that. He just wants to provide additional content for people, and for somebody who's maybe not on screen as much, I think that's a fantastic way for him to do that. And we've been saying it for a long time since we launched pre-Schmoe, even though we don't do it as much anymore, that Facebook Live is a really, really great untapped thing.
And yeah, I mean, he doesn't have to do it the proper way, because essentially what he's doing is just what everybody else is doing, with their phones, creating content, going live, streaming. It doesn't have to be Christian's car rides don't have to be a Collider production. And it reminds me of when they actually used to like go live on Collider's, I think it was their Facebook page. They used to just go live right after Movie Talk just to like chat with fans for a few minutes. I remember they were doing that quite a bit. But I welcome sort of any of that, because I think that's why we engage with these people in the way that we do, because they're always kind of thinking of the fans in that way, and they're willing to do that, and it doesn't matter to them. They're just going to put something out. So I think that's fantastic. I like the idea of him doing this daily, even though I think it's going to be hard to sustain that. And I mean, think about if After Schmoe was a daily show. I don't think there's any way that we could carry that. So I'm not saying this in like a negative way, but I wonder how long it takes before he goes back on that idea that I don't think that he can do it daily. But he is definitely going, he said that he was going to go live tomorrow, and to like his I guess his fan page is where he's doing it from. That would make sense. So you can follow, I think he tweeted about it. So if you guys are just now figuring out what we're talking about, you can go to his Twitter, and I think he's got that linked up for you if you want to check him out tomorrow. I guess by the time this comes out, he will have already streamed on Friday, but, whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting sort of take, too, and I get it that, there's some people that Collider is their day job. They're on camera a lot, and they're just involved in this, and they don't want to constantly be putting out content all the time. But if there is one little minor criticism that I do have of Collider, I will say I do think that they could be more involved on social media in terms of showing things behind the scenes. Like, I know their Instagram feed in particular, like they post like photos of like, let's say a scene from a movie, if they have like some movie news that they want to comment about. But you're never really seeing a ton of the behind the scenes stuff from their like Instagram story, or I don't even know if they have a Snapchat or anything like that.
You might not see it specifically from that account, but I think if you follow everybody that works there, they definitely post pictures of them while at work.
Absolutely, and I get that 100%. But I think for a channel that's growing, there's other ways, and like we follow Gary Vaynerchuk, and he is very, very, very active in providing different types of content on all of his social media platforms. And I just think that there's different ways that they could probably utilize some stuff like that. I don't know what it would be, but I think Christian is for sure on the right path. Obviously, Inside Schmoedown was sort of launched on Facebook Live. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just a platform I think you can try some different things out on for sure.
Do you think Mark Fernandez knows Gary Vaynerchuk?
I don't know. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming he does because, I mean, I don't know how involved Mark Fernandez is with Hot Ones, but Gary Vaynerchuk was on Hot Ones. So, I don't know. Maybe that's a good question. I think he spent some time, obviously, in New York. That's where Gary V is primarily located.
You know who I think Mark Fernandez definitely knows?
A$AP Rocky.
My hero, Mike Shinoda.
Oh, 100%.
Fernandez. Dude, Mike Shinoda. It's my hero. I love him. Cared about him almost 2 decades.
If you can just get Mike Shinoda to comment on an episode of After Schmoe, that's enough. Or you could Mark, you can just comment and say, Mike says hey. That's it.
I would cry.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Really? I'd be like, oh, that's cool.
Anyway,
where's our Fort Minor album? Where's that Fort Minor follow-up album?
Yeah, fuck yeah. What the hell? Okay, so I want you to talk to me about the Batman v Superman stuff and the fact that Christian had to address this because people are freaking out about it. The fact that it was excluded from the top 50 list but made it as on the honorable mentions because it feels like that they were just being way too rough with this movie.
Yeah, and I sort of spoke about that a little bit, just the fact that you don't have to look at these videos in a specific way, but I mentioned this last week that I'm taking in this content just purely examining the actual product itself. I'm not really looking at what the reaction has been, so it sort of caught me off guard. I didn't realize that there was this not just controversy with the fact that Batman versus Superman was an honorable mention and it wasn't actually on the list, but it's been an ongoing thing throughout the entirety of every single episode. It's always been you're putting this on there but not Batman versus Superman, and it's like a constant thing, so much so to where I guess it's just caused a complete uproar, and Christian had to address it. He was like, pretty much said, listen, I thought it should have been on the list. We voted, and again, going back to the whole thing of like, you know, how did this voting take place? Not that I care in the sense where it's like a big deal, and I'm saying, how was this taking place? We need to count the votes. Were there hanging chads on these voting ballots? You know, was Russia involved? I'm just legitimately curious, but he had to come out and say, you know, just to address this whole controversy, which I found amusing, honestly. It's fine. It's fine. Just let it be.
Have you noticed Have you noticed the new video opening tag? The opening. I don't know.
For Collider?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I've noticed. I've noticed that for Movie Talk they've replaced Ashley Mova with Mark Ellis.
What?
They were for Movie Talk for the closing thing. It used to be Ashley Mova doing that thing at the end. They replaced her with Mark Ellis. Did we?
Yeah.
I don't remember talking about it.
It might have been off air, but we talked about it. No, I'm talking about how Collider. I don't think it's changed on the main shows yet, like on Jedi Council. Oh no, it was on Jedi Council today. Yeah, you'll see it. It's a new Collider banner. Yeah. Awesome. So anyway, there's that.
You know what? It's like we might have suggested that they update their graphics.
Yeah, it's like when I said on the show that Jedi Council was nothing but Microsoft Word clip art.
I don't mind the Jedi Council stuff.
It was stupid. It's not. I don't actually really care that much. All right. Let's get into the Schmoes Know live show, I think, unless we have anything else to say about Collider.
Nope.
Okay. We're talking about Schmoes Know Show. What is this, 308 now here?
308.
And I judging by the title, I wasn't sure how excited I was going to be because, for one, I loved when they did the Ben Affleck, Mark Wahlberg filmography battle that they did. So my first gut reaction when I saw the thumbnail was a little bit disappointed. The fact that we were going to do Wahlberg again. I know they've got a movie coming out, but they could have just not done this at all and waited until another two actors. Anyway, I'm not going down that. But that was sort of my first impression of the thumbnail. I was a little slightly disappointed, but I don't know. We'll get into it. We're going to hear Jaye Williams do his very short stream of consciousness notes for this episode. Jay, take it away whenever you're ready.
These are your Schmoes Know stream of consciousness notes brought to you by SightSoundPod.com. Oh, hi, some guy. Cobbster is angry. Cobbster is really angry. The entire show is angry. This is a very divisive episode. It must be a full moon. RB3 with the mic drop on Mark Wahlberg. Cobbster actually dropping some knowledge. JT must not listen to After Schmoe. Only I keep my ear to the ground. And those are your Schmoes Know stream of conscious notes brought to you by SightSoundPod.com.
I love how quickly we traveled through the episode in that way. Like you were not kidding. That was your shortest page of notes ever. We went from like minute 15 to like an hour into the episode so quickly. That was fantastic.
It's sort of interesting, and you know, these stream of consciousness notes, they're not edited in any way. I don't, you know, like
that would be stupid.
I literally have to think. Like, you know what I'm saying? I have to realize something, think something, and write it down. Honestly, here's the weird thing about this episode. It sort of, it was an interesting group this week, but, and honestly, kind of like you, when I saw the thumbnail, I'll be honest, I kind of thought to myself, this might be kind of like a more throwaway episode. There's not a lot to talk about. They actually got into some really good conversation that I was really, really fascinated with. And that's sort of what happens with my stream of consciousness notes, is that when they get into really good discussion, sometimes I'm just invested in the show. Like, and there were some nice little moments that popped up. Like, obviously, I pretty much skipped everything with Brett, but even Brett's like Brett to the Future was relatively concise. So I don't know. I don't know what happened there. Just I was pretty locked in. I was paying full attention.
Yeah, that segment ended up, I think that only lasted like one segment when they did the Wahlberg versus Ben Affleck. That took up like a good portion of the show. Like they were super in depth and were talking about, and they kind of did this a little bit here, but they were talking about like the fact that you're talking about an A-list director in Affleck and comparing it to, like, it was just really super in depth, and they went movie by movie on IMDb. I think actually by the year, and they compared filmography, and it was just like really super interesting. And I was actually, I guess the next time that they did that, I wanted it to be like this, but instead they did another Wahlberg, and it was a little bit shorter, but that's not really, it doesn't matter, because there was so much, so many other things to talk about with this episode. But I do definitely want to see that versus thing later on down the road. The first thing I'll address is I didn't watch it. I didn't see the beginning live, so I came in as Cobbster was pissed. So the guy on the couch, I had no explanation for who Leif was, so I just again shouted, "Who is that?" Oh, the dogs are going nuts. And then it transitioned into a, "Get him out of here! He's taking over Brett's spotlight!"
So yeah, I didn't know who Leif Vandervoort. I don't know how to say his last name, but I didn't know who he was.
It's not that.
Okay, yeah, I don't think you're right. Or I don't think I'm right. I didn't know who he was at first, but then he mentioned his credit on The Amazing Spider-Man, and I thought to myself, oh, I remember exactly who this guy was, because in going through my listening to old shows for history lessons, I remember him coming up. And it's fascinating to me because at first I thought he was just some guy that Brett knew. Like, I legitimately did. I was like, wow, they just let Brett bring his friend on. But he had his take on Thor and all this other stuff. Then to come to find out he was an actual director, which was fascinating. And usually with these director discussions that they have, they're not always my favorite. And I think we talked about that last week, like what we expect out of movie directors. But I found myself getting really interested in the things that he was talking about and in this project that he was working on.
I agree. I liked it. I was much more interested this week in it. It just there was so much more to the conversation, though. Like, it wasn't completely about, well, maybe it was. Maybe that's unfair. But I personally just thought it was interesting to hear all about Green Bay and Lambeau Field, and more about, I guess it was just more of like, instead of like, what's it like working with this actor? It was like actually in the trenches, what is it like for this movie to get made? And I think that's more of like what interests me as a film buff. Like, I love, like, if I hear behind the scenes things, I want to hear specifics as to how it was made and how they, the problem solving behind filmmaking. And it was also just sort of like this, it had more of a, I'm trying to think of an expression to use. It was more about this guy just making something happen for himself, as opposed to just hearing a guy like, this movie was great, working with this actor, blah, blah, blah. There was just a lot more to it. And, sometimes I think, like, again, we talked about it last week, and we might have made some kind of generalizations. I was just kind of curious about the discussion of like how do we like this type of conversation on the Schmoes Know Show, and you can take it case by case. But this one I was just a lot more interested in it. But and again, maybe it just kind of felt like maybe it's another thing too that we had already spent more time with him, whereas like I think last week the director of Mayhem just kind of came in for his segment and then was gone. This was like we were able to spend more time with Leif and know more about him in general. So I guess you just care more about it instead of just having a guy come on to
show,
promote.
wasn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. He sat there the entire time. So I think there was just more that we gravitated to with that. The fact that he was able to stay in for the entire show, and even the fact that he's Britt's friend aside from all that, he sat there for the entire show. He contributed the entire time, and it just felt like he was a part of the company instead of just coming in to promote and get out, you know. So I think I just kind of take to that a little bit better.
It was also kind of the planets aligning too, I think. Obviously, the sports conversation, we get the sports references all the time with Collider. You know, it's a joke at this point. But the fact that he was also informing us, not just, it wasn't as much about sports as it was about this community that was obsessed with this team. And obviously Mark is going to be super, super interested in that because of how big of a sports fan he is and how, you know, there's other sports fans in the Collider offices. But just some of the little details that he was dropping here and there about this film, working on this film and the community around it, was bringing other people in the conversation. You know, even getting into his comments about the trials and tribulations and struggles and successes of making a film like this, which, you know, was really insightful for somebody like RB3. It was just interesting. It was just a really, really interesting conversation. One of my favorite probably conversations they've had with like a director person. That's not to say that the other ones haven't been good. It's just a different sort of perspective.
Oh, you can say that. I think you're saying that none of the other one's are good.
You're right.
And that's why this one's
exactly
good.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Okay, very good. I was actually waiting for that the entire time. Like, when are you actually going to get RB3 in there? Because I would have loved to have spent more time with, maybe let RB3 kind of run the show for a minute. I think that would have been great for RB3 to have that kind of one-on-one discussion. That would have been pretty fascinating, I think. But overall, though, I thought Leif was a great contributor, and of course I was joking. I mean, like, as it was happening, I was like, get him out of here. Like, you're taking the spotlight from Brett. Brett, what have you done? You brought in your friend that knows more about Thor Ragnarok than you. What are you doing? But again, it was just me being funny and silly, and obviously he contributed very well to the show. So I was very happy to have him, and I would love to have him back. And yeah. Are you gonna watch the Green Bay Packers movie?
You know what I didn't gather from most of the discussion? I didn't gather that it was supposed to be a comedy. When they showed the trailer, I was like, "Oh, this is what this is." Like, okay. I mean, it looks interesting. It looks really good, but I just didn't know that that's what the movie was going to be.
So you're not gonna watch it?
Look, I don't even know if I'm gonna go see Justice League. Okay.
You still haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2?
I'm probably not going to. Do I need to see it for Avengers Age of Ultron or whatever it's called? The Infinity Stones?
So anyway, what else happened? Oh yeah, Cobbster got really, really mad. This is fascinating. Because people, Ken and Christian and Ellis and Riley and all those guys that, you know, have been doing this for a long time, they do this for a living, the fact that they know that regardless of what comes out in the movie news, their job is to report it. So it's fascinating to see someone who works at Collider who has no interest in covering movie trailers or being in the room when someone is covering a movie trailer. And I think you had your own little rant when it came to trailers. I think that was like last week or the week before. And I think someone actually tweeted us about that as well. But I just kind of think it's fascinating that he gets so mad that his job literally disrupts his movie fandom. And I find that very interesting because you would think as a movie fans we would jump at the chance to have this type of job, but I guess not everybody has to be that way. Everyone has their own particular desire or non-desire to watch movie trailers. So I think I don't blame them. I mean, I like the idea of going into movies without knowing anything about them as well. But at the same time, I think there's a level of compromise. So it was kind of funny. Whether he was just playing it up or not, I thought it was funny how much how angry he actually got at this.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, too, to me, because I actually appreciate where Cobbster's coming from. With all of this, my whole discussion, my whole rant about it necessarily was for the commentary around trailers of like, are they showing too much? Are they ruining movies? This and that. Cobbster's pretty much always had the same stance of, if people want to watch trailers, watch trailers. I personally don't want to watch trailers, or at least that's what I've gathered from his assessment. He's not saying that everybody else should take up this mantle that he's taking up. He's just a very big proponent of this sort of approach. And you are right, it is sort of a fascinating thing. It's another thing that Christian actually addressed in his video, that he feels like Christian's statement on it was essentially that is an interesting take for Cobbster to have, but it is pretty much only, or it is pretty much uniquely the privilege of somebody who is already a diehard movie fan, because they're already knowledgeable of these films coming out. They're already at least knowledgeable of their existence. They don't need to be advertised to. But for the general public out there, they need trailers to inform them, obviously, to advertise and spread the word. Now, those are sort of two separate conversations. Again, going back to what Cobbster's stance is in general. Now, should people force him to watch trailers? No, probably not. He has his own method of editing together trailer reactions and whatnot, and movie reviews that have trailers in them before he's seen the films. Yeah, so look, guys, don't force him to watch trailers. If there's other people to do whatever job that requires Cobbster to do some sort of, like when they force him to watch the Last Jedi trailer on the plane, I'm not for that. Like, he doesn't need to watch it for his job. He doesn't even need to react to it necessarily. Like, that was like one of the first times, besides like a behind the scenes thing, where I'd ever actually seen Cobbster involved in a Collider video. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the thought process was behind that, other than he was on the trip and they were having fun. Maybe there's like a little behind the scenes thing where they really wanted to, again, disrupt him and give him a hard time and force him to do this. But ultimately all he did was complete the Brady Bunch squares that they had for that video. And I mean, look, if Ken Knapsack doesn't have to watch any movie ever to be on Movie Talk, then Cobbster doesn't have to watch a trailer. Like, I would love to know the insight. Like, I would love to know more about what Cobbster does day to day, and maybe someone can point me in the direction. Maybe he's talked about it before. Maybe he discusses it on particular, whatever. But I would love to hear more about what he does day to day and when he's in the room, when he's out of the room. I agree. There's no real reason why he has to do anything. You know my motto, Jay. You don't have to do anything.
That's right. That's right. And it's funny that you bring up Ken in this whole discussion too, because Ken Knapsack is actually the type of individual that sort of sits on the opposite end of the spectrum as Cobbster, but employs that sort of same mentality where his job is to the detriment of his fandom. He's been very outspoken before that he doesn't like knowing, when he goes on Jedi Council, it's actually doing a disservice to his fandom because he doesn't like reading in. And I mean, Jedi Council, of all the shows that exist on Collider, that show will literally break down every single thing about a Star Wars film and the Star Wars franchise. And honestly, and this isn't negative towards it, but it will honestly sort of disseminate a ton of mystery. Like, if you watch Jedi Council, you will know everything there is to know about Star Wars. And sometimes that's not great for somebody who still wants the enjoyment and the fun and the excitement of experiencing things in a more sort of natural setting.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people that do that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the show itself for doing that, because some people really do enjoy it. But he's always been very outspoken about the fact that he does it because it's his job.
Yeah.
And he's blessed to have his job.
We're just commenting on, I just like observing the behaviors.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Of these people, and that sounds so weird and almost stalkerish, but I just think it's interesting.
It's a sociological sort of you know observation about the people that work there.
But no,
we're the weirdos.
This is kind of going in a Collider direction, but you're absolutely right. I mean, even if you watch Heroes too, Heroes does a little bit of this as well. But I mean, there have been so many times on Jedi Council where they're like, where they talk about spoilers, and I think to myself, I wonder how much Christian really wanted to know that. Like, I know he's obligated to, as the host of Jedi Council, to know everything and report on it and speculate, but sometimes they break stories and they have like leaked photos and things like that, and I wonder
Spoilers,
like how much did Christian really want to see that or talk about that. So I kind of think that's fascinating. But anyway, just to put a period at the end of this, yes, I don't think that Cobbster has to watch trailers, and so he shouldn't be made to do that. But
agreed.
Yeah. So I'm losing track. This is why I should take notes as the host of this show. Let's talk about Brett, because
let's do it.
Last week we were unsure about his fate, and even that behind the scenes video that they posted, was last week going to be Brett's last show? Well, no, because he was on this week, and thank God. I think that he felt better this week. He was more in Brett's form, like he felt like he was at home again, and I thought that was really great. There was a few comments that he said something like he feels like he's having the time of his life when he's on at Schmoes, and then he has to go back home. And so there was a little bit of that, but Brett was kind of always that guy anyway. He's self-deprecating, similar to how Ken is. He loves to make jokes at his own expense, so I think he's always going to do that. But and maybe that was going to happen regardless, because his more successful friend was sitting on the couch there next to him, and I don't know. That was interesting to me, but I loved what a great victory for us as Brett Sheridan fans to hear that he has a cameo in that Packers movie. That's fantastic. Yeah. But anyway, I was just glad to see more of what we love with Brett, and I love that Brett to the Future was back this week. I'm glad that he's feeling better. I'm glad that he's not going anywhere. Just a lot of fun with Brett, and I missed you, buddy. I missed you. Jay, what'd you think?
Yeah, I think he definitely felt more comfortable with the fact that there was somebody else that he knew that was on the show to sort of share that with him. And I think he sort of has that same sort of vibe when Christian's there as well. He's been very outspoken about this. He's talked about it on Beardo before, how Christian has always been his in on the show. So when he's there, he feels like he sort of has a reason to be there. But when Christian's not there, and obviously Christian hasn't been there consistently for quite a while now, and that sometimes maybe he just felt like he was just some guy that was showing up. So I get that, and that's sort of his own hurdle to sort of jump over. But yeah, this was a much more business as usual sort of Brett, and I think his Brett to the Future was fantastic. I thought he was funny as always, and he was giving us that fantastic sort of grounded commentary, the saying what everyone else is thinking. He still was doing that superbly the other night.
It's fantastic. I loved it. I love more than anything too, I talked about it last week, I love when he yells out something that I'm thinking as well. That happens so often. But yeah, I love you.
Oh, thanks.
Not you. No, not you, Brett. Okay, what else is there to talk about? Okay,
Sorry, that was my Brett Sheridan impression.
That was terrible. What else is there to talk about?
How about this JT controversy? here at the end.
How
do you feel about this? Look, I love this new take and this new approach. Like he hasn't seen this movie, Justice League, but if he had seen it, he totally would have broken embargo by now. Let me just say that. But
he saw it tonight, I think. Or no, Ellis is seeing it now. I think JTE's is next week.
His new approach, and he's already done this multiple times, his new approach is to say, I talked to somebody, and here's what they said. He's literally breaking the embargo via, like, third person. So it's like this person can't tell you what they think, but they told me this about the film. It's just kind of hilarious. Like, I've never really seen anybody do that. I think I do that from time to time. Like, I think there's been some times where Christian has like you've asked him, hey, how was this movie? And he'll tell you personally. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm going to ask Mark how Justice League was here as soon as we're done recording.
Yeah, and I want to hear. But, like, I've never gone to Twitter and been like, according to Christian Harlow, da-da-da-da-da. It's just kind of funny to me.
I think I have abused my friendship with him in that way. I think when it might have been Rogue One. I think when Rogue One came out and I knew Christian had already seen it, we had a brief conversation about it privately. And I think I posted a screenshot of something very vague that he said, and I left his name out of it at the time.
Right.
And that was like a week before the movie had even come out. I think I have abused our relationship in that way, but it's one thing.
Did he respond with not loving it?
Hashtag not loving it, yeah. By the way, this is fascinating to me. I've been rewatching The Leftovers with my mother. And as I'm watching the show, I can't help but think about, like, I just think it's hilarious that Christian was so encouraged by the casting of Justin Theroux to just up and start that random show of all the things that he could be watching. We've talked about that multiple times off air, how funny that is to us. But anyway.
That's why I have that joke about, like, when Donald Glover was announced to be Lando Calrissian, that if you were to go on his, like, YouTube or his, I don't know if he has Spotify, if he has, like, recent Spotify, that he's been constantly listening to Childish Gambino.
I would love to know more about what music they actually listen to. And I know that Ellis loves classic rock, but I want to know what Ellis thinks about modern music. I want to know, like, if I gave Ellis Brave the Storm, like, what would he do with that? I'd be very fascinated by that.
I asked RB3 when he was on my music show about, like, rap and hip hop in the Collider offices, and he said that Christian does enjoy some Drake every now and then. and I can't remember. I'd have to re-listen to it. Actually, it might have been off air, but I think he said it would make sense for him or something like that. He's the type of guy. He's the type of guy that I was like, oh, okay. I don't remember who said that. It might not have been him. It might have been somebody else, but I was kind of like, okay.
That's weird. Anyway, what were we talking about?
We're talking about Christian running through the six with his woes.
We were talking about JTE. So when you want to talk about the ethics of JTE kind of breaking embargo, I mean, that's one discussion. Obviously, that's silly for him to do that. JTE, just be very cautious. I don't think he's going to actually get in trouble for that tweet. I mean, I've seen actually, even earlier this week, I saw some really clever Justice League reactions that talked about Justice League without talking about Justice League. I can't remember who it was. All I did was search it on Twitter and found some random person's essay on the film without having mentioned that it was about Justice League, and I kind of thought it was fascinating. But as far as, like, how this statement erupted and what the argument and debate that it caused on the show, I mean, I don't really have a problem with what JTE did. I mean, JTE didn't slam the movie. I think, and JTE he was on the show and he said it. He just said, look, I mean, if you want to just lower your expectations, you might find yourself enjoying the movie more instead of making it such a big deal and heightening it to the point where you're only going to become disappointed if it's not what you expect. I mean, it's like I don't mind that. I think it's totally rational of where he was coming from. So I get that, like, understand that not everyone thinks that. So the spirit of the debate was fascinating, but I did think that him, like, the whole him calling into the show to defend that. Maybe he was going to call in anyway. Maybe he was going to be a part of the show regardless. But the fact that it ended up being about that, I think it was completely blown out of proportion. And, like, I didn't really see how, like, yes, it's funny because JT is the butt of so many jokes, but I didn't really see why this was something that he should get shit over. Like, and again, I know Riley was poking fun at him because it was JT and calling it a shitty tweet, but I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I mean, it was just whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of goes along the same lines of the conversation that we had a couple weeks ago with the whole movie versus film discussion. I mean, these are the types of conversations that we as movie fans have that I feel like you don't really get on Collider as much, but you do get on Schmoes a little bit more. Sometimes we talk about stuff like this on Sight and Sound, but you know, my whole reaction to the entire discussion was that it is a fascinating discussion. You know, I've always been a big proponent of, you know, set a higher standard for the movies that you watch. Expect more from things that you watch. Always sort of expect progression and all this stuff. But I also understand as somebody that, at least in the music review space, that you can't set a bar. Well, this is just my opinion, but I personally can't set a bar for every single thing to meet because so much goes into that sort of approach, whether it's the cultural, you know, the cultural dynamic of how art is made and all that stuff. I don't want to get into all that, but my point being that I think it's a valid discussion to have at the end of the day, and everybody can have a different point of view on it. We've talked before about how there are very snobby, highbrow sort of reviewers that I think they don't adjust their criticisms for things. They're people that typically don't like Marvel films. They don't like Stranger Things too. But there's also the type of critics, and I think Collider and Schmoes Know make up these critics that can adjust their level to where they can enjoy a Fast and the Furious film and a Marvel film just because they understand that it can be just dumb fun. If that was the case, then Cobbster would be like, every Fast and the Furious film has to be as good as The Godfather 2. You know,
right.
It's just like that's not necessarily how it has to go.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think that about does it. I mean, is there anything that we didn't cover? I have one last kind of hypothetical conversation that I want to have, but
no, not really. I mean, you know, regardless of the fact that we might not have had a ton to say about the episode, I actually think it was a good episode. Like, I was legitimately entertained by it.
I agree.
So sometimes when they are these I say this all the time, sometimes when they are these conversationally heavy episodes of the Schmoes Know Show, we don't have a ton to talk about because if we did, we'd probably just be contributing to the conversations that they've already had, and that's really not what we're here to do.
Right, and we didn't even have some of the heavy hitters. We didn't have Ken. We didn't have Makuga. So, but God love Riley and Cal and Alicia. But I feel like I missed somebody. Who am I missing?
You had Emma Fife.
Emma Fife. That's right. So
listen, wait, I do have a bone to pick. Could we stop putting these things at the end of the shows? These little look, I can't stand that.
It's better than doing it in the middle. Like we talked about how they threw in that they threw in that whatever American Horror Story thing, and we talked about the fact that you listened to it as a podcast, and there was just 10 minutes of you not knowing what's going on. So if you're going to show like some cool behind the scenes thing for Atomic Blonde, definitely put it at the end of the show. But it could also just be a thing that exists on their channel in general, and maybe they'll put it up as its own clip. But maybe that just depends, because I don't know who Emma did that for specifically. I know she mentioned it, but I don't know if I don't think she went there for Schmoes Know. Maybe she did. You can correct me, but if it's specifically for the Schmoes and they were invited to do this particular thing, then I would just like them to see it on the channel. But if they're going to put on the live show, put it at the end. I think that's definitely best.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, I stand corrected on that. My whole thing with it was the show was ending and I was sort of ready to shut it off, and then there was this thing going on, and I'd sort of already turned my brain off to watch it. But that was just my experience. But you are 100% right. We talked about that issue with audio listeners like having no idea what was going on. I think if you listened to it this week, you would have just heard a song playing.
I think that they should quit promising phone calls, because this happens multiple times. The show just gets so bloated, and I would rather them let the show breathe than and maybe we've had a version of this conversation before. I would rather them let the show breathe and let it go wherever it wants to go instead of promising phone calls. And I get the whole we want to interact with the fans, but okay, maybe every 5 or 6 weeks do an entire Q&A show, or just know that you don't, like, a week where there's not a whole lot to cover movie-wise, you might know, like, we're definitely going to get to phone calls. But just don't make the promise if you can't keep it. And again, like I said, if they don't know, then they don't know, but they don't have anything to worry about if they don't make the promise. So if they're at the second break and they're like, yeah, we don't have a whole lot of show left, it's going to take 2 seconds to cover Emma's video, then that's when they know they'll take phone calls. And it's not like something they have to promote. Like,
right.
We're watching. Like, the Schmoeville Facebook group is watching. So you don't need to tease it at the beginning of the show necessarily to have people get ready. Like, I think that's the only thing that they can. I just don't see that they have to do that. So
I agree 100%. I think plus it also, if you don't promote it, there's also that sort of surprise that maybe, listen, there's a lot of people that call in from Virginia. I don't know if maybe the Virginia people get like a quicker feed or something like that than we do, but yeah, I agree.
It's a bias because Ellis is from Virginia. So
I agree.
Anyway, so the last thing I want to talk about, this is not to be taken serious, but it was just something that I came up with and thought about. We had someone tweet at us shortly after we announced that we knew where the Collider changes were going. And we were asked on Twitter if we think that Phase 7 is coming for the Schmoes Know Show. And I didn't know how to answer it because I didn't know how to not give away what I knew about it, which is very little when it comes to actually how Schmoes Know is affected. So everything that I'm doing here is just something that I came up with. It doesn't have anything to do with being informed about where Collider is headed or whatever. To address that specific question, for Schmoes Know to have a Phase 7, it would mean, like, if Schmoes Know is staying at Collider, whether Collider moves studios or not, that doesn't count as Phase 7. Like, a phase is when they move to a new studio and they didn't know where they were going to be housed, but Schmoes Know, as long as we know, will be with Collider wherever they go. So I don't consider that a Phase 7. So to answer that question, are we going to see a Phase 7 from Schmoes Know? No. That's not how I read into it. But the hypothetical that I want to make is that we've talked a lot about the fact that Schmoes Know is like now the stepchild to Collider Video. Like, even Christian, he's all about the Schmo Down. Jedi Council is his baby. Mark Ellis is the full-time host of Movie Talk. Collider is what pays the bills. So I'm curious. I just came up with this hypothetically, and I want your take on it. What if the Schmoes Know channel, and this is pretty radical and pretty out there, what if the Schmoes Know channel eventually is just dissolved because Christian and Mark can review movies at Collider? And what if the Schmoes Know Show was just a part of Collider on Wednesday nights, and Schmoes Know became like what SK Plus is in a way? I don't know if that makes any sense, but I was just thinking about the fact
you're talking about Sight and Sound Weekly.
Yeah. What if Schmoes Know becomes Sight and Sound? No. I was just, again, this is absurd and this is just completely out there, but I remember one day, I think it was when I was looking at the Murder on the Orient Express, the fact that like Schmoes and Collider was side by side. It was just kind of like, well, it would be interesting if Mark and Christian just did movie reviews for Collider and Schmoes Know just became a Collider show, because the only other thing that's really going on, like they got rid of Chris Hartwell's series for whatever reason, and they had a couple videos that was like a behind the scenes. Like they did something for Iron Man, like a what if Tom Cruise was Iron Man, something like that. Like they've experimented with Schmoes Know the past year, and they've realized that I don't know if it's worth it necessarily. So again, I was just curious. What would you think if something crazy like that happened to where Mark and Christian were just solely at Collider and the Schmoes Know Show became part of the Collider channel?
Here's how I will respond with that question, or this whole idea. Here's where I think you are incredibly valid for even coming up with all of this, because most of Collider is Schmoes Know. I mean, most of the people that are involved there come from that space. So there's just not a lot of time, I think, to put back into the Schmoes Know channel itself. I mean, with all of them being as involved as they are, you know, there's two ways of looking at this. You could easily say, oh, well, maybe when all the changes take place and whatever happens, and they're not focused on all of that and planning and this and that, and it's sort of the ship is sailing smoothly, then maybe they can focus on moving Schmoes Know forward. Okay, well, there's all of that. Then we don't have any issues, no problem. Not that there's any issues at all anyways. Then we have to start thinking about legacy, I think, the legacy of the Schmoes Know feed. Are they all too wrapped up and too busy where they do need to pass the ball and pass the torch a little bit? And this is something that we've talked about in general. I think that's where something, you know, in terms of evolution and progression and just, I don't know necessarily about growth because I don't really pay attention to it that much, but I think you have to look at the SK Plus page. It's constantly getting new shows. I mean, we just got the new schedule today from Cobbster, and there's almost 2 shows 7 days a week. There's at least 1 show 7 days a week. And I just think that that's sort of where the progression is. And this isn't negative towards the Schmoes Know feed at all. They're just busy. I mean, that's just the state of things. There might be a day when everybody is taking up a spot on Collider, and there needs to be some thought put into what do we do with that. I think it's a completely logical thought process. That's about as much as I can offer.
So we can talk. We have talked a lot about Collider's growth, and for the longest time, like when I started After Schmoe, for the longest time, the channels always were neck and neck when it came to the amount of subscribers. And Collider's pretty much about to lap the Schmoes Know channel.
But hit 400, right?
Yeah, by 100K, and I know this isn't. I'm going to watch Schmoes Collider regardless of how many subscribers they have. And I know that that's not something Christian even particularly cares about, but it's just, I think it speaks to what we're saying here. And if you go to their YouTube channel, you can see that, like, there are just links to other playlists, like Harloff Podcast, the Schmoedown. And so, like, even those videos, I really enjoyed the best of videos that they used to do. They used to do a best of movies by month, and they also used to do it, like, on the weekends when a particular actor had a movie coming out. And they just abandoned that in June. So it's been several months since they've done that. And so when you consider, you look at the channel and you see the live show and their movie reviews, the only other thing that it seems to be going for it is like the What's on Fios videos, which just seems to be something that pays the bills yet again. Right. So it was just complete hypothetical, and I'm curious if with this whole Collider change, and again, this is actually the part that I'm not privy to. I don't know anything about the future of Schmoes Know, but it's just something that I thought I would bring up and talk about. So,
well, I mean, I think if anything, if I'm really thinking about this from a more business standpoint, how it would work, it would be logical just with what they have there. You know, it would be logical to have an RB3, an Ace, even a Beardo, people that aren't necessarily paid Collider, because obviously Cody Hall and Cobbster are both employees of Collider, but it would be logical to have the people that aren't paid by Collider to create some of that content. But you would honestly have to pay them. And that's sort of how I look at anything on the Schmoes Know proper page. Those things are like, this is where mommy and daddy are. This is where the big, this is where the big gun videos are. So if you want to afford to pay them without taking the money out of the pocket that's already there, you kind of have to generate money off of the SK Plus page. Does that make sense? So like, you have to generate money over here to pay for whatever new advancements are over there. So I understand it and I get it, and I think it's very interesting. These are all types of conversations that would be nice to have. We need like a Schmoes Know retreat, which I know is going to take even more money out of the coffers, but we need like a retreat. We need to put our minds together. Mommy and daddy need to address us, tell us what the plan are. Maybe if we were all together, we were all moving in, not that we're not moving in one direction, but if we all had hey, this is where we need to be going, we could help you out. That's all I'm saying. We've already given Collider all these ideas to run with, and they're doing it. But yeah.
The last thing I'll say, Roka needs to be utilized more on Schmoes Know. He's in the studio more often.
Yeah,
so,
what the hell is Roka?
I don't know why that's not a thing, so make that happen. Also, I've been analyzing social media. The fact that the Schmoedown Spectacular logo was just announced. The fact that Christian is tweeting more about having bloggers and people coming in to witness the Schmoedown Spectacular. The fact that Skaliski just happened to be on last night's show. I think that they are filming the Spectacular this weekend.
Sounds awesome. Amazing. It would have been nice to be invited. Oh, wait, we were, but we can't afford to fly out there. Please buy our merchandise.
I just wanted to, I think that's interesting because they're going to, I'm just curious how long they actually keep that secret, And so, yeah, it's pretty fascinating that they're able to do that. So, anyway, that's it for After Schmoe. Thanks for joining us. My name is Ryan Snelling. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at WhatUpSnell. If you go there, you'll see everything that I'm doing for Sight and Sound and my band that is back together now and writing a new album and all kinds of exciting stuff. I get depressed over people that I enjoy becoming sexual predators. So there's that. Jaye Williams, where can the people find you?
You can find me at Jaye Williams, J to the A to the Y to the E, on Twitter and Instagram. It's the same for both. What do I do on Twitter, you ask? Well, I write headstones for myself when I die, and I think about how I'm constantly covered in dog hair. You can also find me talking about music every single Friday on Sight and Sound Music. I just started doing video stuff, which is some extra work that I'm stressing out about. I'm going to try to keep that up as much as possible. Yeah, music is fun. Music is cool. Ryan's got music. I've got music. You can find what am I saying? You can find all about that stuff. You can find what am I saying?
I don't know.
You can find out about all of that stuff over on our Sight and Sound YouTube page. Subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subs by the end of the year. Get on it, people. That's all I've got.
The show started with me counting on you being able to carry the show, and you, I think you're worn out here. You're worn out.
I'm looking at a thing of rice noodles right now that need to be eaten. So that's what I'm about to do.
Pop quiz. What song do I need to play at my funeral? Talking about headstones. I need you to know this as my best friend.
What song?
I've said this to you before. I've also held some of our other friends accountable. What song is playing at my funeral if I die young, Jay?
Listen, I have no idea, but I'll tell you exactly what it should be. It should be California by Phantom Planet.
That's not it. It's Where Is My Mind? Duh. But, okay. Anyway. See you later. Bye.